Hello everyone, this is Chaff Commander Coffee with the first episode that I will be doing for 0 AD Empire's Ascendant. Now I thought it would be best to start off my 0 AD series of games, not by jumping straight into the multiplayer, but by actually showcasing what 0 AD is all about. Now, as I said in my intro and roadmap for the channel, 0 AD is an RTS game that was originally developed as a mod for Age of Empires 2 Age of Conquerors. What I want to do with this video is kind of go over some of the things that you can expect to see when I start jumping into the multiplayer, things like, and also some things to help you if you want to get into the game. So think of these, or this video in particular, as the start of my tutorial series for 0 AD. Now, if you have already played 0 AD and are looking for maybe a guide or a brush up on some of the things that are included in the game, this could also be quite helpful. But for those of you that are new or want to get into 0 AD, then, well, stick around and I'll show off and share what I know about the game and see if I can't give you a few hints and tips and maybe just a little bit of a starter. So this video I want to begin by showing off some of the options for the game. So if you're not really interested in that, then there will be another video in this playlist that goes over a basic game against the AI, just showing off some of the mechanics and how 0 AD really differentiates itself from other RTSs out currently. So let's start off by going into single player. Now, I won't actually be launching a single player game, I'm just going to go over some of the things that you can sort of expect to see when you get into the multiplayer lobby, and, well, if you don't want to play multiplayer, then some of the things to help you set up games against the AI. Now, the AI was supposed to be improved in Alpha 22, so I am kind of looking forward to seeing how well it fares. But let's just go over this screen and sort of introduce you all to how 0 AD sets itself up, much like other RTSs, but just a quick overview. So obviously there's your player slot, and then the player slots for other players. And you can set the number over in the right here, all the way from 1 to 8. I've found that I play quite a lot of team games. I have played rated 1v1s, I've also played unrated 1v1s, I've played quite a few games back in Alpha 21, quite a few indeed. As I said, unfortunately, I can't show you any because I have none of the recordings since it's been updated. But not to worry, there'll be plenty more in the future to go over. But yeah, so mostly team games that I have played, generally 3v3s, so that would be 6 players. Sometimes I've played 4v4s. The game's not great for its optimization for really large games, but it really does depend on the population, which I'll go into in just a moment. Right, so back to the top here. Obviously you can set your teams, you can select your civilizations. There's quite a few, and I will be doing videos on each different civilization and how different they are to each other. Now, within certain culture groups, they share a lot of similarities. For example, the Athenians, the Macedonians, and the Spartans, they're all sort of the Greek culture, but there's still a lot of differences between them and how that translates into their play styles. So I will be doing a video on each different team, just giving a quick overview of their unit rosters, their unique technologies, and some of the play styles you can expect to see with those teams. You can also, here on this little icon here, if you have AI in the game, you can have AI inside of your multiplayer games. So if you just want to play with a few friends online, and you're not really bothered about playing against other people, then you can play against the AI in an online lobby, so that's quite nice. So right now we have got the tutorial AI, which is for the introductory tutorial scenario, but I'll just be actually doing my own tutorial for you guys. And then there's Petrobot, is the default 0AD bot, and you can set it from sandbox over to very hard, and you can pause the video here if you want to see some of the differences between the different difficulties. Right. Over here on the right, you have, alongside the number of players, you have map type. So you can play skirmish maps, which are, well, the majority of the maps you'll see in the online games. Some of them are, for example, set to certain team values. Others, again, it depends on which map you're playing. But generally speaking, you'll see most people playing random. Now, the map filter here dictates what maps you'll see. Default has all of the maps except naval and demo maps. Naval maps are ones where you have to use a navy to reach your opponents. Demo maps are ones that are not currently finished or are just for demonstration. New maps are the ones that are in this particular release of the game. You might see a few people playing that since Alpha 22 is quite recent. However, most people will just be playing default. Trigger maps have scripted events inside of them. They're more like scenario style maps, although they aren't the actual scenarios, which are here. Now, the different scenarios, as you can see, there's quite a few. They are effectively more historical games, or particular game types. For example, Gold Rush here has very mineral-rich metal deposits, whereas something like the Peloponnesian Wars, as you can see, most of the civilizations are Athenians with one Spartan. That is the Greek map, or the map of Greece, with 6 players dedicated around the Peloponnesian Wars. So the different scenarios are quite interesting. I haven't played around with them too much, but if you are looking for a more historical kind of game, or gameplay, then the scenarios are quite nice. But as I said, most people you see playing will be playing on random. The map filter is generally default, though you can see certain people play all maps. Other people prefer to play just the... Well, I haven't seen too many people who just prefer to play naval. But yeah, mostly it's default or all maps. Most people play default, so there you go. One of the... I will go over... Obviously there's a huge number of different map types that you can play, and they all have very different... Some have mechanics very specific to them. Others, it's just on the map generation, like what sort of features you can expect. Probably the most common one you'll see in the online is mainland. I think this is mostly because it generates fairly balanced land-only maps, and that's what people generally prefer to play, I've found. I personally like to just random. I'll play any map, regardless of how unbalanced it is. I could have the worst position or the best position. I'll still play it. Doesn't make a difference to me. There are a couple other interesting options, such as Unknown, which will be any map, pretty much. Unknown Land, so only the land maps will be picked. And Unknown Nomad. And there's a little warning there saying that starting resources should be set to at least medium, otherwise you can't build a town centre, which is a bit awkward. But yes, they are Nomad games as well, for those of you that enjoy playing Nomad in the Age of Empires games or in other RTSs that have that feature. But Mainland is the one you will see most regularly played if a map is selected in the lobby, simply because of its balance, and there's no navy to consider as well, so it's just the pure land game experience. And there's obviously a selection of map sizes. Generally speaking, in 1v1 games you'll either see small or medium. Very few people play on tiny because it's just a bit too small to really have a full game going from each different era or stage. But generally speaking, with team games they can go all the way up to giant if you really want. But as I said, because of optimization issues in the game currently, again, it's only an alpha. It's still very good for an alpha game, but yeah, it's got some work to go to really get there. But yeah, generally you'll see medium up to large. Anything more than that, and it can get a bit laggy. Now, as I said, with terms of lag and the optimization and stuff, we'll go into that here. In the extra options that you can select for your game, you can play the game speed anything from 0.1 times speed at turtle to insane at 2 times speed. I haven't seen anyone playing games on the slower speed options, but I have seen people playing it on the faster options. I know a couple of people do like to play Age of Empires at a little bit of a faster speed than the game naturally comes with. But I have even seen people playing on Insane, especially for deathmatch games, which, obviously, deathmatch games, you start with a load of resources. There is a deathmatch option. The standard... I will mostly be focusing on the standard settings for a 1v1 rated game, since that's the sort of ladder... the ladder standard way of playing. So that's really how you get your rating up in the lobby and such. So that's what you'll mostly be dealing with if you want to play ladder games. Otherwise, team games, it really does vary depending on the host, but they generally follow the same trail of thought in that they generally have the standard game match settings, even for team games. So we have a selection of victory conditions. Capture the relic. Just like relics in the Age of Empires games, you can capture the relics, and once you own them for long enough, you can win the game. Unlike Age of Empires, I can't remember if you need priests to capture the relics, or if you capture them with heroes. I haven't actually played a capture the relic game, but it is an option there for you. So yeah, feel free to play around with it. Conquest, defeat all opponents to win. That's the most standard game mode you will see, and is the one that's most regularly played. But you can see games running all the different options as well. Conquest structures, which is simply conquest, but you only need to destroy all of your opponent's structures to win. You don't need to kill all of their units. So for those of you that prefer to have a game that's victory is based on actually removing all of your opponent's structures and destroying their base, that's the one for you. And then there's Conquest units, which is kill all of the enemy's units to win, which can lead to a bit more of a focused game where you're not so bothered about what your opponent has built up, but just where they can hide their units, like destroying fortresses and towers and town centers, that kind of thing. So the actual basis of the game is a bit more focused on actually killing their units. But in Conquest, you'll find most players, they won't like hide a scout in the corner of the map and wait for you to find them. Most people will tap out if they feel they can't win. So generally speaking, Conquest is the standard. Regicide, you defeat your opponents by killing their hero. Now, heroes are a special unit type in 0AD, and they're quite powerful units. So unlike Age of Empires Regicide game, where your king can actually be killed quite easily and he can't fight back, in Regicide and 0AD, your hero can actually put up quite a fight. And heroes also have a bonus associated with them, whether it's economical or military based, depends on the kind of hero. But each different team, each different civilization has its own set of heroes. So Regicide can be quite interesting. Haven't personally played around with it too much myself, but I can see Regicide games being a lot more diverse in their strategies than a Regicide game in Age of Empires, which mostly involves just building a fort at the back of your base or right in the middle of your base and then sitting your king in it and hoping you don't die. Then we also have the Wonder Game mode, where, yep, wonders do exist in 0AD as well. They have a bit of a mechanic associated with them, not just building or capturing a wonder to secure victory after a timer runs out, but wonders also increase your pop limit. So when you build a wonder, you get 10 extra pop limit, and there's an upgrade that you can buy at the wonder, which is very expensive, just like building the wonder itself, which increases your pop limit further. So it can lead to some interesting games in 1v1 if wonders are allowed. Most people tend not to build wonders, as I said, simply because of optimization issues with larger population sizes and more players. Wonders are generally generally banned, but otherwise frowned upon because you don't want to lag everyone out of your game. So if you're playing a wonder-based game though, then that's another story, but yeah. So wonders exist both in the Conquest game mode and obviously in the wonder game mode. But they do have more purposes aside from just being a victory condition, which I find quite nice. And then you have no victory condition if you just want an endless game for whatever reason. I can see this being a bit more of a sandbox style thing that they've added. So if you want to just play against the AI and see how fast you can build your economy up, you just set no victory condition. Or if you want to build like a Rome or like an Athens, you want to like build a historical looking base effectively on a certain map, then that might be something for you as well. But generally, as I said, Conquest is the standard, it's the one you'll see the most. Then there's population cap, which goes from 50 all the way to unlimited. Yeah, you won't see many people playing on unlimited. As I said, optimization issues, it can really cause some serious lag. Even playing on, well, I'll just go over it roughly to give you an idea. If you're playing 4v4, so there's 8 players in the game, population limits are either generally between 100 and 200, though you'll generally find them around the 150 region, which means the game still ends up having about over 1,000 entities, which can still lag it out a fair bit. So don't be put off if the population cap is lower. It's more because for everyone's peace of mind, you make it lower so that not everyone's going to crash effectively. In a 1v1 rated game, most people play with 250. Some people do prefer to play with 300, but it's really a matter of preference. So at the end of a 1v1 rated game, you'll either have between 500 and 600 units. Other people prefer to play a bit lower at 200, but really does depend on your system or on the host, what they prefer. But I think 250 is the standard. It's certainly the one that I've played with the most in 1v1s. So 250 is quite standard. Starting resources, as I said, goes all the way up to deathmatch, where everyone starts with an absolutely endless supply of resources. And then it goes to the more... Anything below deathmatch is something you're more likely to see in a standard game, though most people start with low. I think the reason for this is because it really does just make you think about your early economics decisions and what you want to perhaps boom to in terms of unit composition or technologies and age up times and things like that. Medium is also one that's a bit more common. You'll very rarely see people play on very low, simply because the resource amount is so low that you'll often have a lot of idle time, and again, because it's an RTS, people don't really want to be sitting around waiting for resources to come in to actually be doing things. Whereas on low, if you time yourself correctly, you can pretty much go through with no idle time, which is quite nice. Medium gives you a little bit more to play around with, and then high and very high obviously allows you to really kickstart your game and get it into the later stages of gameplay a lot faster. But low is, as I said, the one you'll see more regularly. Low or medium, one or the other. I think in rated games, generally you'll see low, because it puts a bit more of an emphasis on decisions in the early game in terms of your build order and things like that. Ceasefire goes from all the way from no ceasefire up to 60 minutes. You'll very rarely see ceasefires below 10 minutes because, I mean, people aren't really going to rush you in the first 5 minutes of the game. It's not, and if someone does, it's very easy to fight off. So I wouldn't really worry about ceasefires between 1 minute and 10 minutes. But 10 minutes and onwards is generally more you'd expect. I haven't seen anyone playing with ceasefires above 30 minutes. I have seen a 30-minute ceasefire game though, so they do happen on occasion. But generally you'll see most games with no ceasefire. But as I said, even with no ceasefire, you probably won't get rushed until maybe about 6 or 7 minutes in at the very earliest if your opponent is particularly aggressive. So yeah, no ceasefire is generally the standard option. Then you have the map options and various other ones, which I'll quickly go through. You have explored map, where you can basically you see the entire map, but there's still fog of war. So you can see where all the resources are, where the forests are, and the mountains. You can even see where, I think you can see where your opponent's starting town centre is, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I don't really play with explored and revealed map. Fog of War is generally another standard game setting, and there is, for those of you that have played Age of Empires, there is cartography in this game. So if you're playing a team game, all you need to do is research cartography, and then you can see what your allies see. So yeah, there's a reason not to have the map explored from the start of the game, because there is technology that accommodates shared vision. Revealed map, same as explored map, except you can see everything at all times. It's effectively omniscience. You can see everything in your opponent's base, and they can see everything in yours. They can see where you move your units, what trees you're cutting down. They can see everything. Obviously they can't look inside your buildings and see what you're actually producing, but I mean, that's when you can see what your opponent's doing, you can make an educated guess. So you won't you very rarely see revealed map actually. It's a bit more regular to see explored map than revealed, but as I said, most people just play with the standard Fog of War. Then you have treasures, to disable treasures. Certain maps will spawn with treasures, which are effectively things that they're sort of like little resource nodes that you can pick up with your units to give your economy a boost. Certain maps have treasures on them. Not all maps do. So the maps that do have treasures, I generally don't disable treasures, because if I spawn on a map that has treasures and I don't know that there's treasures and my opponent does and he finds all of them, well then he played that better than me. So I generally see treasures as being sort of a map feature, so I generally don't disable them, but I do know people that do, just so that if you play a random map there's no bias in terms of if they explore and find 8 treasures and you only find 2, then there's no real bias there. But again, it's up to host preference or player preference. But as I said, I generally play with the treasures allowed. For the maps that do have them. There's Spies. You can choose to disable Spies. Spies are a new feature in Alpha 22, so I haven't played with them yet. However, from what I read in the changelog, Spies are effectively I can't remember if they're a unit that you train or if they're just sort of something that you unlock, but you attach them to a caravan. So a merchant caravan. I think it's just merchant caravans. I'm not 100% sure on that. You might be able to attach them to buildings as well. But to merchant caravans you definitely can. And you then get vision as if you owned that caravan. And your opponent doesn't know that you have a spy on them. So it's kind of interesting. I like the idea of Spies. I really do like the idea of Spies. But I haven't played with it enough to really comment on how balanced it is or how useful it is. I can certainly see it being quite an interesting mechanic in terms of you can see parts of their base as their trader moves through their base to go to their certain trade routes. And obviously, longer trade routes are worth more in terms of resources. So in a 4v4 game, one person trading will send their traders all the way round, potentially through all of their allies' bases to go to their other ally on the other side of the map to get the most profit, which means you get information on all of your enemies, which is pretty cool. Can't see how useful that will be in a 1v1. Trade doesn't normally happen in 1v1s unless it really kicks into the late game, where trade is necessary to earn certain resources that will run out. So that's a more of a very late game consideration. But if spies do take effect in a 1v1, they could be very powerful, because if you can see where your opponent's trade route is and you can raid that, you can completely cripple their economy, especially at an integral part of the game where trade is necessary to get those more advanced upgrades and units out. So spies are very interesting, but I can't make too much of a comment on them. I'll have to play around with them myself when I get back into the multiplayer games. But yeah, there is an option to disable spies if you don't want them in the game. So, you know, that's quite nice that it's there. Teams locked, so effectively you can't change teams, which is basically that's to do with the last man standing mode, I guess. I think you can, I can't remember if you can do diplomacy with players during the game, so if you can ally with players mid-game, if it's like an 8-man free-for-all and you decide to ally with one of the players. I can't remember if that's possible. Mostly team games are generally locked, so if you're playing a 3v3, it stays a 3v3 until the end of the game, or if you're playing 1v1s, that's kind of irrelevant, but yeah. So there's an option to lock the teams. And then there's last man standing, where you basically set whether the last remaining player or the last remaining set of allies win the game. So this is an interesting one, because if you're in an 8-man free-for-all and diplomacy is a thing, again, I can't remember off the top of my head because I haven't played those many like huge free-for-all games. But yeah, if you are the say 2 people are allied and then you have last man standing on, and they beat every other player in the game bar 1, so there's just 1 player and those 2 allies left. One ally could be like, oh, go and attack them now and I will support you with my cavalry, and then they go in for the attack and instead you break your alliance and then send your cavalry in to destroy their economy, and then they have to tap out and then it's just you and one other person. But because that one last player was being attacked by your now betrayed ally, they're going to be weaker as well. So it could be a way of like... I could see some very interesting games going on if diplomacy is a feature. But again, I honestly cannot remember. It's been quite a few months since I last played. So if there's anyone that does play 0AD who's watching this and can point that out... Wait a minute, am I being ridiculous? Yes. I am being ridiculous because it says that diplomacy is on the side there. So, scrap everything I just said on my random tangent. The last man standing means that, yeah, you can basically, it's another option to go with the diplomacy side of games. Duh. Chaff just being a bit stupid there. Never mind. So yeah. That's the extra options there for those of you that are interested. Obviously, if you've been watching this video and we're expecting a game, you should have been listening, because as I said, that will be in the next video. In this video, just going over the options and what you can expect in a standard game. So yeah, there's over here, you've got Conquest, defeat all opponents. This is just an overview of all the options available. Diplomacy, hey, so yeah, it is there. Players can make alliances and declare war on allies. So if you are playing an 8-man free-for-all, you can make alliances or just go alone and, you know, see what happens. And then there's the Allied victory and the map description. So, yeah. Mainland is a typical map without any water. Hence why it's the most standard game you will see in the multiplayer lobby. So, just a quick recap. before I bore all of you to death by going over options. The things you will see the most in standard 1v1s. You'll see, generally speaking, map size small or medium, 2 players obviously, mainland, which is the most common map to see, but otherwise you'll probably see unknown land, which is any land map. Generally default maps, that kind of goes without saying if you're playing at unknown land, because it won't generate naval maps anyway. But yeah, so map type random, map filter default, map type unknown land or mainland, 2 players, small or medium, and as far as other options go, generally game speed won't be changed, victory condition is generally Conquest, population cap, normally 250, though it can go between 200 and 300. You generally won't see unlimited games. But yeah, in a 1v1, 250 pop, generally speaking. Resources, low or medium. Generally low. But if you play deathmatch games, obviously that will be the standard option for a deathmatch game. So, there you go. No ceasefire. You generally have Fog of War on, so you won't have explored map or revealed map. Depending on host preference, I will say whether to disable treasures or not. Now on mainland, and there is no treasures on mainland, so that's an irrelevant option. But in unknown land, you could roll a map where there is treasures. Spies, again, it's in 1v1s, I'm not sure how often you'll see spies, but again, host preference on disable spies or treasures, or player preference. And teams locked and last man standing. I mean, teams locked will stop people from breaking their teams. Last man standing, obviously, you can betray people. So yeah, these are kind of irrelevant for a 1v1, but in team games, obviously they're more important. You'll mostly see team locked in a team game. If you're playing a free-for-all game, you may see last man standing, which can be pretty funny. But overall, that's the game options, and yeah, there's not much else to say about that. Again, you can pick your civilizations. Most people do prefer to pick their civilization. I personally play random, because, in my opinion, when you're playing an RTS, you get better at the game as a whole by playing random. That's not to say people who pick a team are worse at the game, because what you'll find generally is people who focus on playing one team will be very good as them. However, if you play random, then you kind of learn how to play against every team, which I find overall makes you better at playing in a more situational basis and a speedier sort of gameplay. You can make decisions faster because you're more used to making decisions on the fly, because you're not like, you don't go into a game with a certain game plan for that team, because you will play any team. And if you really want to get good at 0 AD, I highly recommend you just play random. As I said, I will be doing a video on each different civilization and giving a kind of overview of their roster and their unique technologies and some of the playstyles you can expect with those teams. So if you are looking to practice a certain civilization, look out for those videos. I will be uploading them later, and you can check them out and see if I've got any hints or tips, or some of the more niche aspects of that team you may not have thought of. As I said, I haven't played in a few months, so if things have drastically changed in terms of meta, in terms of those teams, then drop a comment in those videos and I'll make sure to keep that in mind when I play in the online. But overall, that is what to expect when you go into 0 AD for the first time. If you've played RTSs before, it shouldn't come as a surprise, any of these options, but it's nice to see that they are there. If you are thinking, I'm kind of enamored with Age of Empires or StarCraft or whatever RTS you currently play, and you're not quite sure if you're looking for another one or not, and you just want to see what's available, well, that's what's available in 0 AD. So, with that said, the next episode will be me playing a 1v1 with the very hardest Petrobot AI, which means it will gain 60% more resources. That's the only bonus the AI gets on very hard. And as I said, they did boost or improve the playability of the AI in this current alpha. So I am interested to find out how good the AI has gotten, because I have read on the forums and in the Reddit and such that some people struggle playing against the AI, and I never did when I was in Alpha 21. So I am curious to see if the AI can put up a bit more of a fight, at least for me personally, in this current alpha. So my next video will be me playing a 1v1 with the AI, and I will be trying to go over most of the mechanics in the game that are different to other RTSs, or mechanics that I really enjoy. So, it's been me, Chaff Commander Coffee. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in my next episode of 0 AD.